Good evening. This is your host, Dan Stafford, with the Midwestern Geek and Cali podcast, podcasting from 42 Tardis Way here in lovely Temecula, California, just about a mile from the cool old classic subdivision of Starlight Ridge, here in summer's winter home. This evening, I have a visualization I want people to do. So this isn't really a good one for listening to while you're driving down the road or operating machinery because I want you to be able to kick back, kind of close your eyes, listen, and just visualize what I'm talking about. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of an introduction to the subject that I'm going to talk about. The first thing I want to explain, and some of you are going to know this, some of you aren't, but it's really, really expensive right now to get into space. And everyone is looking for an inexpensive way to get into space. They're looking for ways they can bring the cost down. Elon Musk is putting up huge rockets on through his private company SpaceX, looking to colonize Mars. Richard Branson is doing Virgin Galactic and trying to do space tourism. There's people that are trying to do space hotels, but it is extremely expensive and it takes a long time to be able to schedule and get a launch done. And there needs to be a way around it. Well, one concept that people have come up with over time is something called a space elevator. Basically, you take a long, thick cable made of super strong material and you hang a counterweight up in geosynchronous orbit, meaning geosynchronous means that anything put in that orbit will stay in the same position relative to the surface of the Earth as the Earth spins around. And you extend a cable between this counterweight and back down to the ground and attach it to the ground. And then you run electric cars up and down this cable to carry stuff into space. The trick with this is we don't have any known materials that can handle the sheer amount of weight of their own cable length to be able to go that far into space. They would basically snap off just due to their own weight. It's not really feasible given the current material science we have. And then again, if it should snap and break loose at the surface of the Earth, or break loose in the middle, even worse, now you've got miles and miles and miles of cable falling willy-nilly wherever they happen to wind up. Not exactly fun. So I have a little bit of a different idea about how we do this, and I call it the Rainbow Bridge because in Norse legends, the Rainbow Bridge was how the gods got to and from heaven and earth, basically. The gods would cross the Rainbow Bridge to get to different destinations from their home in the heavens. And so the name of the Rainbow Bridge in Norse was Bifrost or Bifrost. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it exactly right, but those of you who've followed the Thor comics would know this because Thor basically is an adaptation. The comic book character is an adaptation of the ancient Norse god of thunder and lightning. And so are all of the other Asgardian characters, such as Odin and Loki, the trickster, and Heimdall, the guardian of the Rainbow Bridge, and several others, Thor's wife Sif, etc. And I read about a lot of these legends as a school-age child in the school library, and of course watched Thor on morning comics on the weekends, as well as several other comic book series. But we're not really here for that. I just like the name, the Rainbow Bridge, Bifrost, the bridge to the heavens. So let's imagine how this would happen. How would we create this bridge to space? Well, let me set up some background um, for the idea here first. The first thing you want to know is that the strongest winds in the upper atmosphere, the jet stream, really super fast winds going at hundreds of miles an hour, they generally range in altitude from 32,000 to 52,000 feet. Okay, so that's an altitude range you want to be careful to avoid, for one. Now, as far as materials, what is the most durable, not strongest, not physically strongest, it's very strong, but what is the most durable artificial material humans have ever created? I'm going to tell you, it's Roman concrete, like ancient Rome. There are still Roman aqueducts done from 2,000 years ago that actually still function and still bring water to fountains in Rome. Even more impressive, there are ancient seawalls from the Roman Empire's navy and mercantile marine fleet and ports that are still functional, intact, and working now, today, 2,000 years later. Meanwhile, the concrete that we make here in the United States, current, average concrete life is maybe 40 to 50 years before it starts crumbling and falling apart. And even more interesting, the Roman concrete is now stronger than it was when it was first created. So, very long lasting, durable artificial material, Roman concrete. And in the last couple of years, our scientists rediscovered the recipe for making Roman concrete. So we can make it now. We know how to do that. Now, the next thing you want to know is how high do the tops of thunderstorms reach? Well, about the highest they get is about 60,000 feet. So, jet stream 32 to 52,000 feet. And the tops of thunderclouds at their highest, most intense, generally about 60,000 feet. Okay. So, the next thing that I want to bring into this picture is the flight altitude record for a hot air balloon. Flight altitude record for a hot air balloon was set by a fellow from India. I'm not sure the exact date, but it was set by a fellow from India, and it was 69,000 feet, 9,000 feet higher than the highest top of a thunderstorm, and 17,000 feet higher than the upper level of the jet stream. Now, there was a fellow in Plano, Texas that held the record for hot air balloon altitude prior to the fellow from India, and his record was around 64,000 plus feet. Now, obviously, at altitudes like this, you need oxygen equipment and warm, cold weather gear, etc. But hot air balloons can reach that high. Just saying. Above the worst of the atmospheric effects and weather and winds. Right? At an altitude like that, as long as the part of the earth that you're over is in daylight, you're pretty much going to have nothing but sunshine at that altitude. You might occasionally have very high, very thin clouds that block out some sunlight, but for the most part, you're going to have nearly continuous sunlight during daylight hours. All right. All these facts come into play. And I'll have article links over at www.midwesterngeekandcali.com. This is going to be episode 45. And the links for all these facts and articles about Roman concrete and all the other things that I just familiarized you with will be over at www.midwesterngeekandcali.com on episode 45. Now, the next trick is to put on your visualizing hat, kick back, get a nice drink to hand within easy, comfortable reach, close your eyes, and picture this. It's launch day, and all around the equator of the Earth, all the way around the world, there are crews with hot air balloons stretching in a line from east to west, as far as your eyes can see. Now, these hot air balloons are a little different. They're not the ones you see going to your hot air balloon festivals and stuff like that. No, they're bigger and they're designed for carrying cargo. And they have pressurized cabins. And all of them are filling up the balloon, the bag, with hot air and getting ready. And they're all in communication. And once every balloon is ready, and there's some backup balloons in case some of them have operational problems or anything like that, you already know this, and you're going to be on the crew on one of these balloons. And now the signal comes, it's time to launch. And your balloon starts to lift off. And so does every other balloon you can see. It's quiet. The only thing you hear is people talking and maybe occasionally the roar of a burner refilling and reheating the air inside the balloon bags of these balloons, stretching all the way around the horizon. And as these balloons lift up, they are carrying sections of a ring made of Roman concrete, the most durable material man has ever made, that are going to be lifted into the air to a height of 65,000 feet and attached together. They're going to fit into each other like puzzle pieces on the ends. And they're going to attach together and they're going to be pulled together and socketed and secured with steel cabling and mortar so that they form a ring all the way around the entire Earth, a complete ring. And once this ring is pulled together, you see this ring of concrete stretching in each direction until it becomes too thin to see. And now you have an arch all the way around the entire Earth that can't fall because gravity's pulling on it from every direction at the same time evenly. And no sooner does this ring go up than another round of balloons launches and starts attaching solar panels and fiber optic cables and repeaters and internet connection antennas, microwave antennas for high-speed internet connections all the way around the Earth. And this ring is going to first start bringing in its own revenue by providing internet access around the circumference of the globe worldwide, high-speed internet, and solar power, because at that altitude, there's almost constant sun. Some part of this ring will always be in sunlight, and the other part of the ring will have batteries and power cables and fiber optic cables and internet connection equipment and microwave power transmitters to transmit power to receivers on the Earth. And this is all done within the first couple of months. Now, the ring is up there. It's gathering power, transmitting power, and providing internet connectivity all around the planet from 65,000 feet. But the first fleet of balloons isn't the last fleet of balloons, because all the way around the world, evenly on every side, the balloons keep going, and they build a ring on top of the ring. And they continuously build this ring higher and wider. So the ring keeps growing, and it adds eventually apartments and condominiums and farms that have almost constant sunlight year-round, hydroponic farms, and power stations. And eventually, it gets big enough and strong enough that we're able to mount long tubes lined with magnets on it. And then we bring up cargo containers that have magnets on them, and we put the cargo containers into the tubes lined with magnets and turn the magnets on, and the cargo containers go shooting up into space with solar powered electricity. No need for rockets. And they can go up as fast as we can carry them up with balloons and put them in the magnetic launch tube safely. We're talking time between launches of minutes instead of months, dramatically reducing the cost of space launches. But it doesn't stop there, because the ring keeps getting built taller, larger. We start mining asteroids and comets in space to bring materials to make the concrete foundation and parts for this ring. And we keep building it bigger and bigger for hundreds of years. The ring eventually gets so big that the top of the ring is out in space. And the ring has so much mass to it that if we can figure out how to move the ring, it actually will pull on the Earth and help move it. So, in the future, when the sun gets bigger and starts expanding in size and gets brighter and hotter and closer to us at its surface, we slowly start tugging the planet a little faster in its orbit, because we've shifted the ring to go around the Earth from pole to pole over the time that we've been building it, over these hundreds of years. And then we put thrusters on the ring so that we can very slightly accelerate the ring along the same line that the Earth travels around the sun. So it ever so slightly pulls on the Earth and helps pull the Earth a little bit faster in its orbit every year. And the moon comes along with. And slowly but surely, inches by inches, the Earth starts moving out from the sun just a little bit at a time, millimeters a year, if that. And over thousands of years, the Earth will get a little farther from the sun as the sun gets brighter and hotter, so that the Earth is kept at the same temperature level that it always has been. And eventually, we'll be able to take the Earth and move it away from the sun when the sun is getting ready to die. But meanwhile, we'll have made it easy to put colonies on the moon. We'll have made it easy to put colonies on Mars. We'll have made it easy to put colonies free floating in space around the solar system and on the moons of other planets. And we don't just have to build a ring around the Earth. We can also build rings around Mars. We can build rings around Saturn's moon Titan. And we can conquer space. All right. So now you've got the visual in your head. Now you've got the idea of how it comes together. Now you've got the idea of what it is. You know that it doesn't take any kind of fantastic wonder material that we don't have. It doesn't take any technology that we don't have. All it takes is concerted, sustained effort, year after year, month after month. We just keep building on that initial ring, and it gives us a place to live off the planet, but near the planet. It gives us a way to give land back to nature and still have living space and still be able to go to the surface of the earth and enjoy it. Just take a balloon ride. Take a balloon ride up to your condo, take a balloon ride back down to the earth. And eventually, the human race could move quite a few people off the earth, but not that far away from it. Still able to enjoy the planet, still able to leave room for nature and have room for our population, have all kinds of room around this ring to be able to farm and grow crops and food to feed all of our people. Be able to mine the solar system for all the raw materials that we could possibly need. Be able to get into space relatively cheaply and inexpensively, because you see, the biggest problem with getting into space the way we're doing it now is we're putting so much cost into each and every load, whereas with the ring that I'm talking about, the rainbow bridge to heaven, a literal stairway to heaven, if you will, we put in one big upfront, and then we incrementally add to it over time, and it just keeps getting better and more capable and better and more capable over years and decades and centuries and millennia. And that is how humanity gets easy access from the Earth's gravity well into space, and also keeps the Earth when the sun dies. There you go. Now think about that one and tell me if you think I'm that crazy with this idea, or if it's maybe something we should consider doing if we want to survive long term as a species. Think about it. Meanwhile, it's time for me to wrap it up. So open your eyes and come back to the current life on Earth and let me know what you think. You can email the show at www.midwesterngeekandcali. Sorry, www.midwesterngeekandcali is the website for the show. Our email address is midwesterngeekandcali@gmail.com. We have a Midwestern Geek and Cali Facebook discussion group. Feel free to join the Facebook discussion group and talk about things there. And I'd also be interested in having stories from people that are listening and watching the show. Uh, Send us stories that you think would be appropriate for the show, and if I agree with you, I will read it out here. And if I think you've got good commentary on what I'm talking about, I will also shout that out on the show and read it if it's an extended content comment. And on that note, happy Vulcan fingers to you from the Agent of 42, and there you go. That's how we really get into space. Good night, and thank you for listening.